Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Talking Throttle with me, Alex. I'll be very honest with you, I don't know where to start with my analysis of Mexico. It was kicking off. It was literally kicking off, and I know I've said that before, but this weekend literally left my jaw on the floor. So stay with me as I break down and I discuss exactly what's happened in Mexico and share my opinions on the matter. Let's go. So, if you're new to Talking Throttle, welcome. But if you've been here before, then you know exactly how I like to break down my episodes. I like to focus on exactly what's happened in the race, and then I give my opinions on it after that. Now, I'm not going to do that this weekend. We've actually got some gossiping to do this weekend because that was crazy. Let's start off with the actual qualifying result, because if you watched the episode last week where I gave my predictions on Mexico, I think if I remember correctly, I predicted Max, Norris, and then potentially a Lewis Hamilton podium as well. Now, coming into the weekend, when I seen qualifying, I was a happy bean because yes, I am wearing a Mercedes shirt right now, but you guys know if you've been here before, I am a Ferrari girl through and through. So I said, my boys is up there. Ferrari have got that pace back. This is what we wanted. Now, for other teams, on the other hand, McLaren, very, very split right now. You've got Norris, who is actually showing pace, and you've got Piastri, who is doing the opposite of that, which again, I'm still behooved as to why, but that's one thing, that's a conversation we'll have a little bit later on. Now, Lando smashed it. Charles smashed it. Lewis smashed it. Cool. So that's the top three coming into the weekend. I think Piastri finished what? Was it 5th or 6th, something along those lines? And then you've got Max Verstappen, I think actually may have been in 5th, and then George Russell up there as well. I think the other key takeaway was that Carlos Sainz did manage to qualify in the top 10, but because of his grid penalty from last race, he then got dropped down to, I think, maybe 8th place to start with. But after qualifying, the race then kicks off, and then we have what I am calling the lap 1 fiasco. Now, so much happened in lap 1 that I genuinely cannot remember everything for me to detail it to you. All I know is people were leaving the track and joining back on the track in places they had no business doing. Now, I'm not going to explain the whole race to you, but I'm going to go bit by bit. So right. From my perspective, Max left the track several times to the point where I'm sure he was under investigation, not once, but twice. Lewis was under investigation once. There may have been some situations or more investigations going on in the back of the field, but Max was under investigation twice, Lewis was under investigation once, and then Charles was not under investigation at all. Now, the biggest controversy to come out of this weekend was the decisions that have been made around who should have a penalty and who shouldn't have a penalty. Let me make one thing clear. The point that I'm about to make is not driver specific, because I understand, yes, in my opinion, Max went off several times and he should have received penalties for at least one of the instances that was investigated, but that's nor here nor there. Now, what I will also say is Charles also went off and regained the position because Lewis managed to get second, but Charles managed to go off, came back on and regained that second position. By technicality, Charles should have given that position back, but he didn't, right? Cool. Also, in a similar set of circumstances, Lewis also went off because I believe he locked up, came off, went onto the grass, drove back on, and I believe he gained about a 2-second advantage, right? Cool. Now, the point I want to make is that, I don't think this is driver specific. And what I mean by that is that I'm not angry at any of the drivers specifically. I'm not angry at Max, I'm not angry at Charles, and I'm also not angry at Lewis. The people that I am angry about and the people we should be pointing our anger towards is the FIA. People keep bringing up 2021. We all know what happened in 2021. We all know the controversy and the drama that came with that decision. Why is it that now, 3 years later, we are still seeing a sporting governing body make inconsistent decisions when it comes to penalties and disciplinaries of drivers? The issue for me is that the FIA are not remaining consistent. It feels as though the FIA are trying to make more of a spectacle. It's like they're picking on certain drivers. Carlos Sainz cannot catch a break from them. Lewis Hamilton cannot catch a break. And let's go into the actual situation here, because Lewis was the only one out of all the 3 drivers that I just mentioned. Lewis was the only one to get a penalty. Why I don't know. And as much as people are saying, oh, well, Lewis deserved the penalty, to a degree, I believe you. And to a degree, I understand that. And to a degree, I agree. However, Lewis regained the track and only had a 2-second advantage. Now, in my opinion, that would have been suitable for a 5-second grid penalty, 5-second penalty, as opposed to a 10-second penalty. But for some reason, he got 10 seconds, which then dropped him from his third place podium position, which I can guarantee you he would have kept anyway. And that dropped him down to what, 16th? I was going to say 18th, 16th, 17th, 18th, something along those lines, which I think is absolutely bizarre. Okay, that's interesting, but I understand, because some people were saying, oh, well, that's the rules of the FIA, it has to be a 10-second penalty for that type of regain. Fine, if it's a 10-second penalty, it's a 10-second penalty. However, what you're not about to do, right in front of our faces, is give one person a penalty and not give the 2 other drivers who have done a very similar thing the penalty back. Like, I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. Yes, okay, Max gave the position back. When he rejoined, he gave the position back because he had no goddamn choice. By the time that Lewis was ahead, I think if I remember correctly, I'm sure Behrman had overtaken Verstappen, so Lewis couldn't really give the place back anyway, because Behrman managed to overtake Verstappen, right? Everyone's focusing on Max gave the position back, Max gave the position back, but nobody's talking about Charles. Because I understand Charles is also a Ferrari driver, and Ferrari are not going to radio to the FIA and say, oh, But what disappointed me was that Ferrari technically should have told Charles to give that position back to Lewis, but they didn't. He should have also received a 10-second penalty. But why is it that Lewis got one, Charles didn't? Max, who was under investigation on 2 occasions and should have been under investigation for 3, the amount of stuff he was doing, didn't get one. 2 and 2 isn't making 4, it's literally making 15. I don't understand why, as fans, we continue to sit here and watch the FIA make inconsistent decisions week in, week out. This isn't about Lewis, it's not about Max, it's not about Charles, it's not about Lando, it's not about George, it's not about a driver in particular. What's disappointing now is that it's starting to feel like the FIA are making decisions based on what suits them, not based on what the rules actually say. It's almost like the rules are there, but it's terms and conditions apply. I'm not penalise you, but I'm not penalising you. And that's before we talk about the virtual safety car at the end. Because it's not like on one occasion during this race they just made one silly decision with Lewis. No. I can't understand why that virtual safety car stayed out at all. I don't. There was nothing left on the track. There was nobody on the track. Carlos managed to get the car behind the barriers, but they managed to keep the virtual safety car to the end. Meh. It's giving staged, and it's giving theatrics. It's giving let me give people a hand up. It's giving let me give people the advantage. And I have a massive question mark about it, because me as a fan, I'm like, I love the sport. I love F1. I'm not watching F1 for the drivers. I'm watching F1 because I'm enjoying the racing. And I don't want to watch racing if our governing body is making dodgy decisions all in the name of viewership. It doesn't make sense. And somebody made a very good point to me this weekend, and I'm not going to stand here and pretend like I know football like that. I have a team, I'm a Chelsea fan, but I don't necessarily know the ins and outs and how it works. And they said in football, I didn't know this, that the referees have their own governing body, and then that governing body, if they want a second decision, they then partner with the FA. The person that I was talking to, they're new to F1, they're just starting to understand it, they've watched all of Drive to Survive, they're watching all the YouTube videos, they're starting to understand the sport. And as somebody who had just come into it, their question to me immediately was, oh, so who do you report to if the FIA make a dodgy decision? And I was like, nobody, like, it's just the FIA. So he's like, hold on a minute, that's got to be a bit of a conflict of interest to some degree, right? Because the people that are making the decisions, if they make a decision that you don't like, you've got nobody to complain to. You've just got to sit there and let the FIA make the decisions that they're making, and that's it. Their word is Bible. Does that open the door up for a little bit of controversy? You're damn right it does. I didn't really think about it from that perspective, if I'm being totally honest with you. But the point is 100% valid. Why is it that us as fans, we sit down, we watch the races, we consistently make dodgy decisions being made, and we consistently sit there and think, okay. That's fine. The FIA said, so we just got to go with that. No, it's not fair. And if I'm being honest, it's ruining the sport. And I'm not saying it's ruining the sport because, oh, Lewis didn't get a podium. I'm so upset about that. Yes, of course I'm upset about that. I turned it off for a little bit. Then I turned it back on again. But this isn't about, I mean, it is about Lewis because he's the one that gets targeted the most. I've seen the FIA make a dodgy decision and I turned it off. I promise you now, I'm not watching it. It's giving rigged. And anybody that says it's not rigged clearly doesn't understand what's actually going on. Watching football and being in a Champions League final and the FA or the UEFA or whoever mid-game, we've had two players in offside positions and opposite teams. I know, I'm going to rule that as offside. However, this, I know it probably was offside, but I'm not going to rule it as offside, so therefore the other team doesn't get the opportunity to score a penalty or whatever the hell it is. That wouldn't run. If this was football, that wouldn't run. But for some reason in Formula 1, it runs, right? Because we just accept it for what it is. And it's going to get to a point where they're going to continuously make these decisions on the sly, and us fans are going to get sicker and sicker and tired of it, and to the point where we're just like, you know what, we don't want to watch this anymore. Sports had the audacity to post this morning, or I think about lunchtime today, was Lewis Hamilton's penalty unfair? If you're having to ask the question, no smoke without fire. So let's not pretend like, what's the point now? The race is done. And I will say though, is that a Lewis Hamilton podium is 100% loading. It's like we can feel it coming and it's getting closer and closer to us as fans every single race. Let's talk about the Mercedes drama, because I thought I was a diva. I thought I knew how to say, no, this isn't right, this is what I want instead. George Russell takes a biscuit. George Russell, I would like to crown you diva of F1. You are the diva, the biggest diva of them all. You are the baddest of them all. The way he's articulating his argument, diva! Yes! Yes! Tell them! I loved it. I've got a car on my arse. Sort it out. Sort it out. Like the way he articulated it, and it was like, there's a car on my arse. I'm quicker. Let me swap over with him. And if it doesn't work, I'll give it back. Oh, chef's kiss from George there. That is how you deal with somebody. That is how you put your point across, diva. Yes, we're going to call him George Russell the diva from now on. It just works. Anyway. The final thing I wanted to point out this weekend is how can I go a whole episode without updating you on the McLaren situation. So, as we know, Lando won the race by about 30 seconds and the gap in the championship now is all within 1 point. Now, going back to the dodgy decisions that get made by the FIA. Now, I'm no conspiracy theorist. This is my opinion, okay? You don't have to agree with me. You can agree with me. You don't have to agree with me, but this is just what I think about it. Isn't it a bit weird that the man who was leading the championship for so long and by such a margin has all of a sudden now gone to sleep, which is very uncharacteristic like of him, and his teammate who was behind him by a significant margin has all of a sudden woken up now and is winning by 30 seconds. Okay. That's a bit too convenient for me. I want to make out like Norris did really, really well. Norris smashed it. 30 second win, 100% perfect. But say, you can't tell me now, two people that are driving the exact same car that has had no modifications coming into Mexico. One of them is winning a race by 30 seconds. The other one, who's leading the championship, is struggling to get past and struggling to get a podium. There's no evidence to prove my point, it's just my opinion. Do I think Lando did an amazing job? Yes. But do I think it's also suspicious that all of a sudden the championship leader has gone to sleep and he's not performing anywhere anymore, but his teammate, who was most of the season, is now winning by a 30-second margin while his teammate can't find the pace, but there's been no modifications on that car coming into Mexico? And if you don't believe me, let's see what happens in Brazil. I'm very excited to see what happens in Brazil, because Brazil is never really short of any drama. The one race that we've got left that I would honestly stand here and say, I am really looking forward to, because I think Brazil really does come down to driving ability. And for me, as much as people are like, oh, is Oscar showing the cracks now? We're starting to see Oscar go to sleep. I don't think we're starting to see Oscar go to sleep. I think there's something deep here which nobody's willing to talk about, and we all watch a sport that has things happening, but nobody really wants to talk about it because it's not the right thing to talk about at the right time. But guess what? You've got me, and I'll say it for everybody because nobody wants to say it, so I'll say it. Do you know what I mean? That's what I think my job is here. Why do I have an F1 podcast? So I can say the things that nobody else is gonna say, because nobody else is saying it, okay? Somebody needs to be that voice, and I'll be that voice if it needs to be. Because I love this sport too much for me to see things happen and think, what's going on here? Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this episode right here. If you have got this far, then I really do appreciate you watching to the end. If you're new to Talking Throttle, stop doing what you're doing. Stop this video, pause it, go to the subscribe button and make sure you turn on those post notifications so you can see when we're posting every Tuesday. Exciting times. Who is not excited for Talking Throttle Tuesdays? I don't know who isn't, but as I said, if you've got to the end of this video, I really appreciate it. Make sure you like it and give it a thumbs up. If anything, I think I've talked myself crazy, and most of this episode was about the FIA's dodginess, but there's nothing more I could really want to talk about in this episode. I think that was going to be my focus. So I will leave you to it. I will see you all next time. I'll see you all next week, and let's go racing in Brazil, shall we? See you later. Bye.